Hey everyone, it's Carissa at Sprinkled with Glitter. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing this card with you. I absolutely love the florals combined with the stripes, and I think it's a great way to not only create your own pattern paper, but to use some of those larger elements that maybe you don't want to spend the time coloring. And I shared some cards that are similar to this last year on my blog, and I'll be sure to link that below. But I'm starting out with the Painted Stripes stamp set from the Essentials by Ellen line, and I'm lining up this kind of medium-sized stripe on my Misty stamping tool. And I'll be stamping on some Neenah Solar White 80-pound cardstock today. And then I didn't know what color palette I wanted to use, so I brought out my newly finished stamping ink swatches. This makes my heart go boom. I have to say it was quite a labor of love, and the idea for the design of these, specifically with them kind of looking like Pantone chips, came from my friend Heather Meeson, and I hope to share how I created these on my blog soon. So I went through there, I found the colors I wanted to use, and now I am starting out by stamping my first stripe, and that is in the Catherine Pooler Meant to Be ink. Now I kind of used the grid on my Misty stamping tool here to determine how much I need to move this paper up in order to stamp the stripe again and have it be kind of connected to the next one. So I kind of calculated roughly about 2 squares here. So I'm just pushing my paper up 2 squares. I'm going to clean my stamp, and then I'm going to ink up my stamp in some Altenew blush ink. Now this was the original color palette that I chose, and I found that it didn't quite suit my fancy. So I brought in another color, and I'll show you that here in just a bit. So I'm stamping my second stripe here, and you can see I have great alignment. I just thought that blush needed to be a little more intense, so I inked it up again and stamped it in the exact same spot. Then I'm going to move this up 2 grid lines again, and I'm going to clean my stamp and ink it up with the Catherine Pooler Lemongrass ink, one of my favorite colors, by the way. Meant to Be and this Lemongrass, I absolutely love them. And once I got the lemongrass on here, I really felt like the blush ink was not quite right. It wasn't holding its own. So I moved this back down into place. You can see that the mat of my Misty, or the mouse pad on my Misty, is still got the ink on it. So I knew exactly where to line this up. Moved it back down, and I grabbed my Catherine Pooler Coral Cabana ink because I know this ink works with the Meant to Be and the lemongrass. So here is my first example of patterned paper. It's just got those 3 bold stripes, and I wasn't quite happy with that. So I decided to keep the color palette and kind of revamp this just a little bit. Now, this doesn't mean that that first piece went to waste. I did end up using it on a different project, but for this project, I wanted to kind of change this up a little bit. And this is a great way to kind of create your own striped pattern paper. So this time, instead of moving my paper up 2 grid lines, I moved it up 3 grid lines. And you're going to notice that I'm shifting my paper kind of right to left a little bit too, just so that these painted stripes don't exactly line up, because they are a little bit uneven in places. And so I didn't want that unevenness to land in the exact same spot. I hope that makes sense. So once again, cleaning my stamp, moving my paper up 3 grid lines, and then inking up in the lemongrass ink. Now, this time I moved it a little too far to the left, and I didn't get this stamped all the way to the edge. You can see I'm kind of going, oh, is this going to line up here? It totally didn't, but that's okay. I am just going to take this, scooch it back over to the right a little bit, re-ink my stamp, and then stamp it again. Now this is going to intensify that color just a little bit, but overall in the design, you really can't tell. So like I said, I'm just moving that back over, inking up part of my stamp. I am going to actually blot off some of this with a paper towel just to kind of soften the connection between the more intense and the less intense ink, and then just stamp that down. Now I decided that after all of this, I do want a little bit of that blush in. So I brought in the really thin stripe from the Painted Stripes stamp set, and I inked that up in some Altenew blush ink and stamped that just above that Meant to Be line. And I think that was the absolute perfect finishing touch to my custom pattern paper. Now, the great thing about a stripe stamp set like this is you can customize the colors and the pattern. So I can space them out, I can make them closer together, and instead of it being one solid stamp with multiple stripes on it, that kind of can make it hard to ink it up in multiple colors. This is a single stripe stamp, so I can create a plaid out of this or a multicolored stripe background, and I can really customize it to my liking or to the project that I'm using. So I really like a single stripe stamp like that for that reason. And this stamp set is great because it has varying widths as well, so you really can customize the look of your quote-unquote patterned paper. So now I have the Mondo Wildflower stamp from the Essentials by Ellen line, and I have it in my Mini Misty. I'm inking it up with some Gina K Obsidian Amalgam ink, my favorite black ink. I know I say that every time, but in case you haven't been here before, I just thought you needed to know that this is my favorite black ink right now. It's great multi-purpose. Now, I went ahead and re-inked it and stamped it twice, so I got a nice dark black solid line. And I do want to mention that I'm not putting a ton of pressure on the stamp when I'm stamping it down. I'm rubbing over the entire surface, but I'm not like pressing super hard. And when you're working with kind of a fine line stamp like this, you don't want to obliterate those lines by adding too much pressure. You can kind of blow them out a little bit. So make sure you're like applying pressure to the entire stamp, but you don't have to like beat on it. Does that make sense? So once I have that stamped on there, I went ahead and aligned the coordinating die and I die cut that. And on the background, I am going to add a single layer of foam adhesive. And then on my floral element that I've die cut, I am adding a double layer of foam adhesive. So these are going to be on varying depths of foam adhesive here. I guess I didn't need to say it that fancy, but I did. I think maybe I'm starting to lose my mind a little bit. But let's move on. I am working on my card base now. It is Essentials by Ellen linen cardstock. It is cut to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and then scored at 5 1/2 inches to create a top folding A2 size card base. And once I have that folded and creased, I'm going to remove the backer from my foam adhesive on this background piece and place it onto my card base. I like to kind of hold it up to make sure I have it there in the center. Then I can press it down. And then I will remove the backer from the double layer of foam adhesive that is on this Mondo Wildflower die cut piece here. And I'm going to nestle that right in. So it just kind of gives this floral element a little more focus on the card. It makes it stand out a little more. And I really like that, but you could absolutely skip the die cutting and keep this as a single layer card. Now for my sentiment, I have die cut this little tag. This is from the Parcel box die set from the Essentials by Ellen line. And I am stamping this hello greeting, which is from the Totally Random Sayings Volume 3 stamp set from the Essentials by Ellen line. I'm stamping that in some Versamark ink onto my tag that I have prepped with my powder tool. And then I'm going to cover this with some white embossing powder and I'm going to heat set that. And I absolutely am like crushing on the craft cardstock lately, and I'm especially loving this white embossing on this craft tag. It is just, I love it. Now I'm going to doll this tag up just a little bit, and I'm just using some natural twine here and tying a simple bow onto this tag. And then I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the back and attach that onto my card front. And I'm just testing this out to make sure I like it. Yes, indeed I do. And so now we can place it down onto the card front and make it permanent. Now, I will say that these bow tails are a little long right now. I did go back and trim those up to make them just a little bit shorter, but I love this combination of the craft and those beautiful soft colors. Now, you know it would not be a card for me if there was not some sort of sparkle, shimmer, or shine. And so I'm just finishing this card off with some sparkling clear sequins in various sizes, and I'm adhering them onto the card front using some liquid glue. So here's a look at my finished card project. I absolutely love the way those sparkling clear sequins catch the light and just add a little bit of shimmer and shine to this card. I love that bold floral image that I didn't have to fuss with coloring. And then I have that hand stamped pattern paper in the background that I can customize the colors. This is absolutely right up my alley. As always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube, so be sure to check there. Or you can head on over to the coordinating blog post. I will have that linked below. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, and a complete list of supplies. As always, thanks for joining me. I'm so glad you stopped by. I hope you enjoyed this project and this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel here so you won't miss any of the paper crafting and card making video tutorials here. Thanks again for watching and spending time with me. And until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. If you want to subscribe to this YouTube channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.